In a dusty township on the edge of Eastern Cape, South Africa, there lived a woman named Nomsa Dlamini. Her one-room shack sat close to a dry riverbed where children played barefoot and goats wandered freely. Nomsa was not rich, but she was known as strong. People respected her because she never complained, even when life bent her back. When she became pregnant, the whole community gathered with joy. But joy slowly turned into confusion when the labor did not end. One baby came out, then another, until the midwife's hands were shaking. By dawn, 10 baby boys lay on a thin mat, all crying at once. At first, the sound felt like a miracle, but something was wrong. The midwife noticed it before anyone else. The baby's eyes were open, yet they did not blink at light. She waved her fingers slowly, then faster. No reaction. Her heart sank. One by one, she checked them again. All 10 boys were blind. The room went silent except for the crying. Neighbors whispered prayers. Some stepped back in fear. In the township, people believed strange births carried strange destinies. Nomsa did not cry. She stared at the ceiling, sweat still on her face, her lips pressed tight. The father of the boys never returned after that morning. By sunset, the shack felt smaller, heavier. Feeding 10 mouths was already impossible. Feeding 10 blind children felt like a curse she did not ask for. Nights passed and the crying never stopped. Nomsa's neighbors helped at first, bringing maize meal and warm water. But as weeks turned into months, help faded. Nomsa began to change. Her eyes lost softness. When people spoke about schools for the blind or churches offering help, she waved them away. Something dark was forming in her heart, something no mother should ever consider. And soon, she would make a choice that would leave the entire township sick with shame. By the time the 10 boys were 6 months old, hunger had become a permanent resident in Nomsa's shack. The crying no longer came only at night. It came at dawn, at noon, at sunset. 10 small mouths opened at once, searching for milk that was never enough. Nomsa's breasts dried up early, and formula was a luxury she could not afford. She diluted thin maize porridge with water, hoping it would stretch, hoping it would silence them for a few hours. It never did. The boys grew slowly. They did not crawl toward light. They did not reach for faces. They lay on the mat, touching one another for comfort, recognizing each other only by sound and skin. Neighbors began to whisper again. Some said the children were a punishment. Others said they were spirits who came together on purpose. A local pastor offered prayers. A social worker came once, asked questions, promised to return. She never did. In South Africa's forgotten places, promises often die quietly. Nomsa started leaving the shack more often. At first, she said she was looking for work. Then she began disappearing for longer hours. When she returned, her eyes were wild, her patience thin. She shouted at the boys for crying, as if they could understand. Sometimes she covered their mouths too long just to enjoy silence. The neighbors heard things that made them uneasy, but no one stepped in. Everyone was poor. Everyone was tired. One night, Nomsa sat alone outside her shack, staring at the stars above the township. She calculated numbers in her head. 10 blind boys meant no school fees help, no future work, no escape. That was when a thought entered her mind, slow and poisonous. She remembered a woman in another province who made money from pity, from showing suffering to strangers, from turning pain into coins. Nomsa went back inside and listened to her sons breathe. She did not see children anymore. She saw a burden, and for the first time, she smiled at an idea that should never have been born. Nomsa's plan did not happen all at once. It began quietly, almost politely. She washed the boys carefully one morning, dressed them in old but clean clothes, and tied a piece of cardboard around her waist with shaky handwriting that read, "10 blind children, please help." She sat near a busy taxi rank in East London, where commuters rushed past with hardened faces. At first, people stopped out of shock. Some gasped, some prayed. Coins dropped into her bowl, notes followed. For the first time in months, Nomsa went home with food that filled her stomach. But pity is addictive. What began as survival quickly twisted into something else. Nomsa learned that the more miserable the boys looked, the more money came. She stopped cleaning them properly. She delayed feeding them before going out, so their cries would sound desperate. She pinched their skin lightly when crowds thinned, just enough to make them wail. People turned back, cameras came out, money increased. Nomsa told herself it was necessary. After all, they were blind. They would never know what she was doing, she believed. Soon, she moved from taxi ranks to churches, then to tourist areas where foreigners passed through. She told dramatic stories, adding lies with ease. Some days she claimed the boys were cursed. Other days she said hospitals rejected them. At night, she counted money while the boys lay weak on the floor. She bought meat for herself, beer, new clothes. The boys still slept hungry. What Nomsa did next crossed a line that even the township could not ignore. When donations slowed, she began renting the boys out to other beggars, splitting the money at the end of the day. 10 blind children passed from hand to hand like tools. Some came back bruised, some came back silent for hours. Nomsa asked no questions. As long as money touched her palm, her heart stayed closed. Whispers turned into anger. Taxi drivers noticed patterns. Church women noticed the boys never grew stronger. A man with a phone recorded something one afternoon, and slowly, like thunder before rain, consequences began to gather. The video did not spread fast at first. It began with whispers on WhatsApp groups, then moved to Facebook pages run by taxi drivers and church youth groups in East London. The clip showed 10 blind boys sitting on hot pavement while a woman shouted at them to cry louder. The camera caught her face clearly. Nomsa. By the next morning, her name was on everyone's lips. People who once dropped coins now felt sick. Mothers hugged their children tighter. Even hardened street vendors shook their heads in disbelief. Social workers finally returned, this time with police officers. Nomsa tried to lie. She said people were jealous. She said the boys were well cared for. But the shack told the truth. Empty cupboards, dirty mats, bruises on small arms. Medical workers examined the boys and confirmed long-term neglect and intentional harm. One officer stepped outside and vomited. Another wiped his eyes in anger. This was no longer poverty. This was cruelty. Nomsa was arrested in front of the same neighbors who once defended her. She screamed that the boys ruined her life, that they were a curse sent to destroy her. Her words echoed through the township like poison. No one responded. The boys were taken away in an ambulance, holding each other's hands, confused but calm. For the first time, they were fed until they slept. The case shook the province. Radio stations talked about it. Churches preached about it. People argued about evil, desperation, and responsibility. Some said hunger pushed Nomsa too far. Others said nothing excuses what she did. Meanwhile, the 10 boys were placed in a special care home in Gqeberha, where trained caregivers spoke softly, fed them properly, and taught them to feel the world safely again. Nomsa sat alone in a cold cell, her coins gone, her name now a warning. And as the boys began to laugh for the first time, the township understood a hard truth. Blindness did not destroy those children. Greed did. Months passed, and life slowly reshaped itself around the 10 blind boys. In the care home outside Gqeberha, they learned routines that made the world feel safe. They counted steps, memorized voices, and laughed when they recognized each other by touch alone. Teachers taught them Braille. Therapists helped them understand that pain was not love. For the first time since birth, the boys were treated like human beings,
not tools for survival. Their blindness remained, but fear no longer lived in their chests. Nomsa's trial became a lesson across South Africa. The court did not ignore her poverty, but it refused to excuse her choices. She was sentenced for child abuse, trafficking, and neglect. As the judge spoke, Nomsa stared at the floor, the weight of her actions finally heavy on her shoulders. The township she once lived in did not celebrate. They mourned, not for her, but for how long the boys suffered before anyone truly acted. Years later, the boys grew stronger. Some learned music, some learned storytelling. One dreamed of becoming a radio presenter. Though they could not see light, they carried it in their voices. People who once believed blindness meant uselessness were forced to rethink everything they knew. The boys survived, not because of their mother, but despite her. To everyone watching, if this story touched you, please like and subscribe to support more powerful African stories. Also, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from: London, California, Jamaica, Trinidad, New York, Florida, Atlanta, Nigeria, or South Africa. We truly want to know. We'll also be giving special shout-outs to the first 3 thoughtful comments as a way of saying thank you for engaging with the story. Moral lesson: poverty can explain struggle, but it never justifies cruelty. Children are not tools, curses, or burdens. When society stays silent, evil grows quietly. But when people speak up, even the blind can be led into the light. The end.